Psychoanalysis proposes that our personality develops through a complex interaction between the expression of our instincts and our early childhood environment, where the child encounters and internalizes shame and guilt. It is an in-depth therapy that assumes much of our behavior is unconsciously driven and that there is value in bringing unconscious motivations to awareness. In this approach, the therapist is experienced as a parent figure, and therapy ideally evolves as a more positive parenting process. This process occurs over a long period of time as the client builds what is called a transference relationship with the analyst. This transference relationship mimics early family relationships and offers rich material for the client to examine. The transference relationship allows the client to acknowledge forbidden and repressed thoughts and feelings in a safe environment and to integrate these into conscious awareness. The alternative is that the latent unconscious content remains destructive to the client's sense of well-being and personal relationships, manifesting in such symptoms as anxiety, depression, conflicts, or addictions. The interpretation of dreams and free association became two of Freud's primary therapeutic techniques for accessing repressed material from the past. Let's take a look at how Dr. Paula Justice uses dream analysis in her work with Jeannie as she examines some repressed feelings regarding the death of her father.
Hi, good to see you again.
Thanks.
Last session, I know you said you had a significant dream that we didn't have time to really process. I was wondering if you'd like to start with that today.
I really would, because it still is with me, and it feels like a really big dream. It starts off in a sense of I've been invited to this wedding, and I'm aware that I'm talking to, I think it's the grandfather. And I'm aware, again, and when I say grandfather, he's more like my age. So it's not a white beard. Or, this is a man, and I'm aware that there's such a masculine feeling talking to him. I'm aware that his son is also present, and the grandson. The wedding is about the daughter. But I'm looking at him and talking with the grandfather. And they're just all three men, but the grandfather, he's so masculine. I'm aware that he's handsome, that that all of the men in the family are, that there's a sense of strength. You know, I'm just very attracted to the whole family in this way.
So there are these three generations of sort of strong, masculine, handsome men.
Yes.
And this is the wedding of the daughter.
Right, right. And what seems to be so special about this is that the daughter gets to have the wedding exactly the way she wants to. And in fact, it's almost as if she, and I want to say spoiled, because I don't think that she's spoiled, but she has all this incredible attention by all the men in the family. And she is told that she can have it exactly the way she wants. And it's an extraordinary request that she's asked for.
Now, these three men, do they remind you of anyone?
Now that you're saying that, I know that when I see them in my mind's eye, they remind me somewhat of my brothers. My brothers are very handsome, and the, you know, so there's this sense of the father, or the grandfather. I'm aware. I mean, he looks kind of like my brothers as well. So there's that sense of the handsome, strong male.
So you're the sister, in a way, to these handsome men.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And in the dream, the sister is marrying. And you said she has a very special request. What was that request?
She wants to jump from an airplane on a stallion into the ocean in her wedding dress.
And what kind of airplane is this?
Well, it's kind of like a cargo, I guess you would call it, a cargo plane, because the back end opens up, and it's like there's a ramp. I see her in my mind's eye again. I can see her in her wedding dress on this beautiful stallion. The ramp goes down, and she leaps into the ocean, and the horse's hoof catches on the ramp.
So there's sort of a stumble as she comes out of the plane.
Out of the plane.
Okay. And this leaping out of a plane over water, does this remind you of anything, or?
Well, the part that really grabs me the most, is one that she gets to have it her way, so to speak. The ocean is, I've loved the water. That the Father has allowed her to do this. That's given her this as a gift, so she can have it this way.
And what about your own father?
Just when I was thinking about that. Yeah. How strange. I just remember, that my father, who, and again, I'm going back and forth in my head about several different things as a daughter. And he, he was a pilot. And
I remember you saying he died when you were very young.
I was wondering if you had remembered that I had told you that I was 4, and he was flying, he was in the Air Force, and flew over, he was lost, actually, over the Gulf of Mexico. His ejection seat went off. And
so he sort of jumped out of a plane.
Well, what you're making me think about is the connection with this good-looking grandfather, too, and the whole masculine piece of it that I feel like I missed in my life. And as you know, my husband I had a terrible accident recently, and I'm aware that I didn't have my father to walk me down the aisle. I'm aware that I have always wanted to be a daughter. I'm aware that I love the sense of my husband, who was, for the first time in my life, I think, a very strong masculine force. And I have felt protected by him, and now he's wounded. And the idea of that horse stumbling, the ramp reminds me of how, my husband is now paralyzed, and he has to get away. The only way he can get around, the only way he can get around is by a van, which has a ramp on it. And so he's now broken or wounded.
So the dream really brings up that longing for the strong masculine, for the father that you lost so early in life, and the masculine strength that you had in your husband, but in a way that's been a little lost with his disability, his accident.
And that's why I think the dream impacted me so much, because of that sense of longing and the sorrow that comes up, wells up in me. And I hadn't made that connection with my loss of my dad And you know, it's so funny even to say the word dad. I speak of him as a father because I didn't call him dad, or I don't remember that, or daddy, you know.
Right. Right.
So when I think of a strong masculine, and I had it for a while, and the courage, and he was a jet pilot, and here's my husband, a motorcyclist and a spelunker, and all the loves of the physical. And that's, I think, what I do connect with the masculine, being strong and adventurous and courageous and
in the dream you sort of leap as the daughter figure. She leaps from the plane into the water, which is where your father was lost in reality, over the water. So you're almost a wish to join him.
You know, there is, I think, part of that longing, or now that you bring that up, it's probably what I would call, feel like sort of a questioning of be here. When I've suffered so much loss, to join him is what you're saying. There's probably some kind of longing for me to join with him. Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And that would be sort of magic, to be able to join with that strong masculine, have your father back, have your husband whole again.
If only. If only.
Yeah. And that wish, of course, doesn't mean that you're spoiled.
Thank you for that one. You know, I think that there is that piece that, you know, if I could have it my way, if I could have the masculine protect me, to give me, to support me, you know, if I had a father, what would that have been like for me?
And knowing that you have those feelings, that this dream has surfaced for you, how does that sort of inform your waking life today?
You know, in telling you and you asking me some of these questions, when I'm really, sense or aware of, I've started breathing better. I think there's a comfort. It brings some sort of comfort knowing that there's a connection this way. You know, that I can make that connection, that I know that I long for that. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Well, I feel much better. Thank you.
Good.
Well, Paula, I first need to say how moved I was by that session, and I guess as I was watching it, maybe I have some of my own issues that came up as I was watching you work with Jean, and I was very impressed with the depth of the relationship that you had with her. And at the same time, I'm thinking, you just showed us a very small piece of really a very long-term, in-depth type of therapy. And to get to some of the levels that you got with her must mean that you have built a relationship with her and have talked through some issues with her previously.
Of course.
I was very interested in watching you work with her around the dream analysis, and was fascinated to see how much of the analysis was really done by her. And you really kind of gave her, I think, the space to take the dream into depths that she was able to take it to. So I was wondering what your thoughts were about the role that analysis and interpretation play in dream analysis. How much of it is building the relationship and just listening versus actually giving feedback and interpreting?
Well, traditionally in psychoanalysis, the client who chooses that type of therapy usually is interested in their own introspection and self-analysis, and the therapist is guiding them rather than doing a lot of the work, directive work in interpreting. So Jean represented a client who is very capable of that self-introspection, so I didn't need to do a lot of interpretation, but rather to sort of create the relationship, provide the environment, and direct her in certain ways where she could see the wish fulfillment piece of the dream and the transference of the father relationship into the characters in the dream. And that's sort of my role in that situation.
And tell me about that wish fulfillment piece. I'm really fascinated in that.
Well, the traditional Freudian interpretation of dreams, of course, is that dreams represent a forbidden wish fulfillment. And the interpretation of the dream is really the exposing of the latent content, the wish that we're not supposed to have. In this case, the longing to have the father figure again, the strong masculine who would protect us and take care of us.
Right, the longing to join with the father.
Yes.
Also, I think I saw a piece of a death wish in there where her longing to join with the father through death.
Yes.
And so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, with her husband's recent accident, of course, her life has become much more difficult in terms of having to work and take care of him, and so obviously there would be times when she might just want all this to go away and perhaps join her father who died a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was fascinated by the whole session, even though it was a short session, there was so much depth to it. And I guess I'm also thinking, well, Jean's a great client. Would this work with other types of clients? And is there a certain type of person that this type of therapy works with best?
Well, traditionally, psychoanalysis is a lengthy therapy, and so someone has to be interested in exploring those depths for a period of time. And not all clients are oriented in that direction. They are more focused on perhaps immediate problem solving. So it definitely takes a certain kind of client to choose this particular type of therapy.
Well, again, that was so interesting and personally moving for me, and I want to thank you for your fine work with Jean.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed being here.